Hello and welcome back to another Writerly Witterings with my second attempt at this recording, because just now I realised that although I'd turned on my camera, I'd completely forgotten to turn on my microphones. Still, never mind, I'm here now. So, a couple of little things. Thanks ever so much for the comments last week about my health and what was going on, and I'm just being joined, I think, by someone. No, I'm not. She's gone away again. That's a relief. Um, yes, 2 weeks out of three staying in hotels with the Smithsonian when I was doing Smithsonian Journeys Mystery Lovers England tour were great fun, enormously enjoyable. I've made several new friends who I'm contacting fairly regularly already. But there was the difficulty that when you go out, you often find that your food is going to be fairly carbohydrate rich. And as a diabetic, that can be a problem. Now, I was fairly careful. I tried to make sure I had as many salads as possible. I tried to avoid things like sausages. I did eat bacon. I did eat eggs. One breakfast, I actually had some baked beans. Very naughty. But I didn't have the whole pot. It was only about a tablespoon worth, but it was really lovely to have baked beans just for once. But I say that because baked beans often have a lot of sugar added, obviously. But even when you go out and have salads, very often the hotel or the restaurant will have added a lot of sugar to the salad dressing, for example. So you can't be sure what the carbohydrate content is going to be. That was one issue. Another issue was that when you say to a lot of restaurants, look, I'm diabetic, I need to have a carbohydrate free diet, what they will automatically assume is, oh dear, yes, well, don't worry, this bread's gluten free, or these vegetables are gluten free, and they'll pile your plate with parsnips or carrots, or which is fine. Carrots I eat, parsnips I can eat occasionally, but I can't have many of them because parsnips are very high in carbohydrate, and because of the way the body reacts to them, they do cause spikes. So 2 weeks away did increase my weight slightly. I went up to 80 kilos, which is a bit too much for me. It's about a kilo and a half too heavy. Basically, I mean about 12 and a half stone for those of you in England, and for those of you elsewhere, it's 14 times 12 plus 7-ish pounds, which I'm not going to bother trying to calculate in my head right now. Instead, I'm just going to say that it wasn't that surprising that my blood sugars went up. It wasn't that surprising that my weight went up. I was drinking quite a lot of red wine with the tour manager whenever we needed to have a discussion about what we were doing the next day. So yeah, these things happen. But I've discovered now, I've been back for a week. Um, I haven't been drinking anything like so much red wine. Thank you, Adrian. It was fun drinking with you, but yes, I'm being more sensible now. And I've found that the weight has come right down, and now down to 79.3 kilos, which is getting better. I need to lose another kilo roughly, but that's fine. Um, the thing that gave me a blood spike last week was lentil and tomato soup. But since that, last Monday, the blood sugars have stayed remarkably stable, really. Um, just looking at my notes here, because I do tend to keep all of my records because it's easier. So here we go. That's all weight, which is really quite uninteresting. So let's just go back to the blood sugars. So coming up to the present day, what's going on here? For some reason, I've gone back to July. I'm just going to fast forward to today. Here we are. Right, so this morning when I tested my blood sugars, which was after breakfast, they were down to 7.3. Yesterday when I tested them, they were 8.1 just before dinner. I was very naughty yesterday. I had 2 pints of beer because I went out Morris dancing with my friends, and I thought, well, in the past I've had a couple of pints of beer and it hasn't had much impact, so I'll see what happens. So I had 2 pints of beer and my blood sugars went up to over 10, which is a yellow warning, but it's not absolutely outrageous. So I can survive with that. Day before that, or earlier that morning, just after breakfast, there were 7.1. Night before, there were 7.5. The morning of the Saturday the 26th, there were 5.6. Friday after supper, there were 6.3. Before lunch, there was 6.4. First thing in the morning, 5.6. So it seems as though my standard morning type of blood level is about 5.6, and then it rises after a meal, obviously, but generally it seems to be getting to below 8.5 without any problem after a meal. The usual measure is 1.5 hours after a meal, up to 2 hours after a meal, your blood sugar should be back down to 8.5. For American listeners, this is not a percentage. It's not the same measurement that you use. What we use in England tends to be millimoles per litre, which is, you need to have a look at a conversion chart to see how that equates. But basically 8.5 after a meal is perfectly safe and decent. I've got the excitement as you get this video landing on your desk. I will be chatting to the diabetic nurse down at our local general practitioner's surgery, and he's going to be giving me the results of the HbA1c test I did last week. So I'll update you on that next week. But suffice it to say that I'm spending most of my time avoiding most alcohol. I had 2 glasses of wine on Saturday. I had 2 pints of beer on Sunday, but that's all I've had in the last week and a bit. I'm avoiding soups because I think that part of the problem I have had has been whizzing up or overcooking things like lentils and other carbohydrate fairly rich vegetables or pulses. And the problem with that is the more you break down the cell structure of those pulses, the easier it is for your body to absorb them. So as a simple example, I've discovered that although I really love mashed swede, I quite like swede, mashing it up with plenty of butter, a certain amount of salt and pepper, really does turn it into a very delicious side dish. However, I've also discovered that whenever I have mashed swede, the blood sugars go straight up again. And the reason I think is that the simple act of mashing and using a stick blender to whiz up the swede to make it all smooth and delicious is precisely the thing that breaks down the cell structure and therefore means, yep, again, if I do that, my blood sugars are going to go up. However, if I slice a swede into chips and fry those chips in butter with some salt and pepper added, it has next to no impact on my blood sugars because it's much slower release. It takes much longer for the body to break down the swede into its constituent starches and then convert those starches into sugars. So it means that the whole process leaves your blood sugars much, much better. In my case, I have to add the rider because somebody did complain. I am not a medical practitioner. I'm not pretending to be a medical practitioner. I'm not pretending to know anything much about the impact of diabetes on people. All I'm doing is relating my own experience of how it's affected me and what things affect me in terms of what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, and everything else. So before anybody decides to complain, saying, "Oh, you're outrageous, you're practicing medicine over the internet." No, I'm not. Don't talk nonsense. Anyway, yes. So try to make sure that your starchy type foods, if you're going to eat any of them, stay in one piece. Don't get broken down by a stick blender or something and therefore get absorbed far more slowly. Because what we're aiming for is to have stability of your blood sugars You can have little blips, you can have spikes, but you want to make sure that you don't have them too regularly, because, as all those people who watch these videos know, what happens is if you get a spike and you get spikes regularly, not a spike, if you get multiple spikes, then it will have an impact. It will kill off the nerves in your feet. It will very likely mean you have to have your leg, or at least below the knee, amputated. It will almost certainly help to make you go blind, which is the impact that it's had on me. I've got maculopathy and retinopathy directly due to diabetes. These things happen. So monitor it. If you've got any suspicion, keep your eye on what the symptoms are for diabetes. Look on the internet. There's loads and loads of websites to help you with it. Check on what the symptoms are. If you've got any of those symptoms, go to your doctor and demand an HbA1c test, which will tell you whether or not you're diabetic. If you are diabetic, you may well be just pre-diabetic or just marginally diabetic, in which case the sort of differences you have to make to your lifestyle, the sort of differences you have to make to your food are minimal, and it's easy. In my case, I had a very severe diabetic response to food. The safe level was considered to be between, or up to 40 was normal, 40 to 48 was pre-diabetic, and 48 and above, or 49 and above, was severely diabetic. In my case, I was on 114, and I must have been diabetic for at least 10 years, but with no symptoms. So it is something to keep an eye on, as it were, from someone going blind, as well as going deaf. I mean, I'm stone deaf in that ear, and so this is the only partly functioning ear I've got. But, I've got one moderate ear, that's good. I can hear some conversations occasionally. And that's all for now. A bit tedious, I've been wittering on for plenty long enough. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up, because that has a big difference with the algorithms. And also, if you're that interested, please subscribe and hit the alert bell, and that way, well, basically YouTube thinks I'm wonderful. So apart from that, thanks very much for watching. Keep safe and healthy, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.